So today I am starting this beautiful series about design and composition. You will be asked throughout the quarter to produce more and more design work. And I think it's important that you don't feel kind of like gut feeling should guide your choices or what it looks good to you. I feel like it's important that you know that there are rules, that there is some kind of guidance, even though yes, some of the design aspect is developing that sense of design, that taste, that sophisticated understanding of what images do, even at the psychological level, to whom is looking at those images. But I'm going to tell you for now just the basics. What can you do to make sure that whenever you start, you have in mind what are the rules that will make that design successful, that composition effective and communicative, and being able to kind of really not confuse the audience but make it clear what is your message. Lines are navigation tools to guide the viewer through the elements of your story. They also tell part of the story through their meaning and the emotion that they generate in the unconscious. Lines and composition lead the eyes through the moving images. They are key element used by the artist storyteller to engage the viewer. Here are a few basic emotions and feelings that lines generate in the viewer. Diagonal lines offer a sense of movement and power. When they meet to form an arrow, it will direct the eye toward a very important element of the composition. Vertical lines reflect strength, grandeur, dignity. They lead the eye up and off the page. Horizontal line creates sense of stability, peace, and serenity. There is comfort in the horizon, in that flat line. Curved line reflect beauty, gentleness, and calmness. The S curve, for example, is balance and grace. Other important element you have to keep in mind when you are designing is the idea of using balance and contrast with scale, with dark and light values, with colors, and other contrasts, other elements that are contrasting each other. Like when you have straight line meeting curved lines, they really generate this kind of dynamic effect. Other important elements are the rule of third and the diagonal line, and we'll illustrate it in a minute. Symmetry and asymmetry is very important. And also here I give examples of something that kind of gives you the sense of why lines kind of convey an emotion or convey a psychological mindset. A landscape of rolling hills and undulating horizontal curves evokes peacefulness. A shot of a rocky mountain cliff with jagged, pointed shapes evoke danger and tension. Deep space evoke a sense of freedom, while shallow space trigger claustrophobia. The juxtaposition of all these elements can tell a story based on emotion trigger. It is impossible to separate what you're showing from how these formal elements of composition convey the image emotional content. So remember that whenever you choose a shape, a position for your element in the composition, those choices will affect the viewer, will affect the mindset, the psychological element of the viewer, how that viewer perceives those elements that you chose. It's kind of what is important when you're thinking of composition. So even when you're shooting a photograph and you're looking at your elements in front of you, remember you can choose how to frame that photo, how to create a composition. So that's what this is about, composition as well as obviously communication and design. And I go through all the various rules and important aspects of composition and design. The very first one is find your focus. So if you look at these images, I'm trying to explain these rules through examples, through images. If you look, for example, at this image, where is the focus of the image? Is it a vertical image, but it's clearly up here where the attention needs to go? And if we go to look at these images, in this case, what is absolutely beautiful is that actually the negative space, the white area of the poster is what it drives the attention. So when I look at this vertical poster right here on the left side, my eye tends to linger up here where the airplane is, and is actually, think about how the airplane is positioned. How different would it be if it was right in the middle? Isn't it more interesting that it is located toward the top right of the image. So these choices matter, but what I want you to focus for now is focus. So what's the focus in this image? Clearly is up here, is in that white, round element and the little airplane floating in it. In this poster, just as well, right? The focus is in this poster is much easier because it's right in the middle of my image. Here is quite different because the poster is, this whole tall element, but is up toward the top where the focus is concentrated. Here is more toward the center. Other images, a little bit more sophisticated, more complicated. Where is the focus here, right? Again, very much in the center. Where does my eye tend to go? It's beautifully deep, this poster, right? But I want to generally linger down here as this element is very striking and then kind of follow the trail of blood to the hands. Here again, we play with negative and positive space with the, empty and the full, and the focus tend to be on the crow, on the full space, right? Again, images that have a lot of depth. This image wants you to dive in. And what is the focus? I mean, there's no doubt we want to run to this end point, right? Same for the shining. The focus again is this white element, this negative space, the white, the empty space carved within the full. Yes, I definitely eventually go up to the face, but is this element the first catches my attention. Here, where is my focus? No doubt is up here. Where's my focus? Right down this beautiful deep line that takes me to this image. So if you think about design and composition, the very first question you want to ask yourself is, what is my focus? What is the first and primary element that I want people to want to go to? And that's kind of really tends to be the big question. And once you start solving that question, generally your composition takes shape and takes life. And sometimes you'll go back and forth, right? You'll create something and you realize actually the best focus is something other than what you had thought initially. So remember that focus, that what I call visual hierarchy, that sense of, okay, what's the primary element, what's the secondary element, and etc., etc. In visual art, you might hear this referred to as form. In graphic design, it's called the layout. When you're creating a layout, what is the primary element that you want to feature? When we're talking about photography, if you look at the distribution of these boats and how the image, again, how we have like the boats carving space into the ocean, creating this silhouette. Composition is the arrangement of design elements that form a whole image. This is just a photo, but whoever took the photo saw that composition and found it striking. A successful composition attracts the viewer and guides the eyes across the design. So if you look at this image, which one is the focus? I tend to want to go right here, right, onto this element. And then because it's bright red and streaming, it takes me up to the bright red text again. So this connects to that element. And then I go down and read the rest of the text. So if you look at this particular composition, I don't know if I want to call it design, this is the primary element, secondary element, tertiary element. And if you notice, there's almost like a loop, a flow. Your eye is flowing through these elements very smoothly. And then obviously there's something called patterns that sometimes creates that focus, that attention. Composition is made out of a number of different visual design elements, including balance, proximity, alignment, repetition, contrast, and white space. Now in this case, the image wants to feature the idea of using negative and positive space, or empty and full, or white and black, whatever you want to call it, but there is a contrast here between these two dichotomies, and that is really important also. Like that, you remember that image with the little airplane and how this empty space, in quote, the space that doesn't have any color, though become the prima donna, the primary element in this composition. So be aware of this idea that a lot of time when you're a beginner designer, you want to fill everything up, but there is something beautiful about empty space. Like look even here, this kind of area that has more breadth, that has more empty space, it basically enhances this silhouette. I see this silhouette and this idea of running much more and strongly because of this empty space, and also because of the horizontal line that are meeting a diagonal line. Remember that idea of using contrast, right? When I talked about using a curve and a straight line, or using a diagonal and a straight line, is a contrast actually creates tension. Same for colors, right? This is black, this is white. There is that sense of tension. If I look at this poster, first thing that stands out is that silhouette, thanks to the empty space around it, to that light space. And then from that silhouette, I go through the word run, and then to work, and then I move down to read the rest. Again, there is kind of like a flow. Primary element, secondary element, tertiary elements are here. I would say this could be all, secondary as well. Run to work tends to be kind of like something you can read at the same level. But you can see clearly the focus is here first, and then secondary and tertiary, and the eye moves through the composition in very much harmony. So that's really, really important. Eye and flow in design. This is really something you have to think about whenever you're starting that composition, is ask yourself, who's the primary element? What is the primary element? Sorry, what do I want to feature most to make my message clear? And next is, how do I make the eye of the viewer flow through all the various elements? Another thing you need to think about is, a lot of time you don't have to put things in the center to make them primary. Look even at this poster, how the eye is right in this location is definitely not, right in the middle, right in the center. Oftentimes, as a beginner, you want to fill up the screen all with color or with element, and you want to slap the important things in the middle, in the center. And that's kind of not the designer strategy. It's more the strategy of the beginner, the person that doesn't necessarily know a whole lot about design. So a good designer thinks through what are the best, options, and pushes boundaries as much as possible. So this is our first lesson about design, and every week we'll have a little lesson that explore in depth with example aspect of design, and what can you do whenever it's time for you to create a composition. What are you, focused on? What are the elements that needs to be kept in check and guiding your choices? Thank you.